Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we, as always, imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and I'm always joined by my good friend and co host, Adrian.
Hey,
And today, we thought we'd do another new type of episode for you, which is called Show and Tell. What does that mean, Adrian?
that means I have seen a movie and Garrett hasn't, so we watch that. And it also means that Garrett has seen a movie and I haven't, and we watch that.
Absolutely. So, let's do this. All this and more coming up on The Drive Back. So, Show and Tell, the brand new episode type where we get to show each other movies that we've seen. Maybe not all of them are good, maybe some of them are. That's what we're here to find out. But let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll go with the movie I chose first this time. So, the film I chose is Dante's Inferno, an animated epic. Released in 2010, it was directed by 7 different directors, and it stars Graham McTavish, Vanessa Branch, and Steve Bloom. Based on the video game Dante's Inferno, as well as the original book, the film follows a crusader named Dante as he journeys through the 9 circles of hell to find his true love, Beatrice, and confront the one who took her, Lucifer. It's worth it to note that several animation studios worked on this, similar to the Animatrix and Halo Legends and other kind of
Oh,
compilation style videos.
okay.
But yeah, this I chose this film because I had seen this a while ago. I'm a huge fan of the Dante's Inferno game because I think it's a really unique interpretation of hell, and seeing hell as a location for a video game is awesome. But also, I had seen the movie, and I thought the movie was while not a perfect retelling of the game, it did vary in its depiction. It was a pretty enjoyable film, and I wanted to rewatch it recently, and
Sure.
enjoyed it. And so I knew this was something that Adrian had never seen before, so I was interested to see what you'd think about it. Quickly, before we kind of talk about it, did you play the game at all?
No, I'd heard about the game, and I feel like it's one of those things that everyone talked about, so I kind of knew about it. And I knew the concept, like I'm familiar with the story of Dante's Inferno, and the rings and all that. So I kind of knew the story, but yeah, I mean, I guess coming out without a spoiler, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I thought I learned a little bit about the story, which was cool. And now that you say there were 7 animation studios, I could not tell that. I guess I just didn't pick up on different animation styles. They did a good job of
Did
putting
you?
it all together.
Because he looked different, like every other circle of hell.
Maybe I thought about that, but then I was also like, with animation, sometimes you cut corners for certain scenes. You're like, oh, they're far away, so we'll
Oh,
not. And I probably just justified it, but it totally makes sense now that you say that.
yeah. So I'm actually glad to hear that you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. I mean, I don't think it's perfect. I don't even think it's really like a masterpiece or even really good, but it's really enjoyable. And as someone who played the game, I think it's very very fun and very enjoyable.
Yeah, I
So
thought it was really good. I thought it was really good pacing. It's only like an hour and 30 minutes, maybe hour 20. But yeah, it's super super fun. It was a great time.
yeah, so let's go ahead and drop spoilers or drop a spoiler warning for Dante's Inferno, the animated epic. But yeah, so I mean, this does vary a little bit in its retelling of the video game. A lot of what I mean by that is that there are things that are included in the game that are not in here. Specifically, the biggest change, there's 2 big changes. Number one is the Circle of Lust, where they do have the courtesan type enemy characters in there that have the things that come out of their entire birth canal essentially becomes a weapon,
Yeah, that was crazy.
which is even crazier in the game because the whole level is you fighting up a tower that's supposed to look like male genitalia, and you at the very top you fight the boss for that level, which is Cleopatra, and she's completely topless, and it's just like because it's lust. It's supposed to be like all that kind of
Sure.
stuff, which They only do a passing mention of Cleopatra in the movie, as she's kind of like in the storms and she kind of flies by. But she is like the main boss of that level.
Interesting.
Also, in the Circle of Gluttony, while they do show Cerberus, probably the weirdest yet best interpretation of Cerberus I think I've ever seen, because it's guarding gluttony, so of course it would have mouths all over.
Sure.
There's a enemy type they don't show in the movie, which are essentially, I think they're just called like walking gluttons, and they have their arms are mouths, and they're all covered in it, and they essentially just sit there eating the denizens of the circle of gluttony.
Oh wow.
So like they actually like eat the people who are trapped there. It's a very interesting visual and a very interesting enemy type. So that's a couple of the key differences. Also, some differences toward the end regarding like the river Styx and how all that. Because my main complaint about the game is that it seems to stall out after the Circle of Greed. Everything kind of, or actually after the Circle of Heresy. Really starts to stall out and feel the same. Whereas the movie, it actually keeps it pretty original all the way through.
Yeah, and I feel like each layer or each ring was like maybe 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
Like I mean personally, I think it would have been cooler to explore each layer a little more. I felt like it was a little quick going through them. It was literally like he shows up and then his guide says, "Oh, here's the boss. You got to kill it." And then he does within like 5 minutes. And I feel like I really liked all the concepts, like for greed, everything being made out of gold, and they could never obtain it, and they would boil in it. Like I thought all the concepts were really, really neat, but we didn't really explore them as much as I wanted to. I think it would have been cool to see those fleshed out a little bit. Maybe that's what the game is for, right? Maybe that's
because this is a companion piece to the game, right? It's it's supposed to complement it, so it's kind of hinging on the bet that you had already played it. So, and actually, it might make me go back and play the game because it's a lot of fun. It's basically God of War in hell. So,
yeah.
But what else would I want to get at? Let's go ahead and talk about voice acting, because I feel like the voice acting across the board is, I don't want to say incredible, but it is very, very good. I think Graham McTavish as Dante is awesome. I love Graham McTavish and everything he's in.
I don't know what else he's in.
Have you watched the Castlevania series yet?
I watched the first 4 episodes.
He played Dracula.
Oh, okay.
And then he played. I know you haven't seen The Hobbit yet, but he was Dwalin or no, Balin.
I've seen The Hobbit.
He was the larger bald dwarf that was like Thorin's right hand man. Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
So he's been in quite a lot, but he's very good here. And then Steve Bloom. I mean, Steve Bloom is one of the most proficient voice actors in the industry, most known for playing Wolverine in pretty much everything. And his voice as Lucifer is just like silky smooth. And I believe Mark Hamill actually plays Dante's father in both the game and the film.
How neat. That's really interesting. I did not pick up on that.
Because he really has that slimy, voice. Because his father is a complete... a complete asshole. So I'm actually kind of curious. What else did you like?
I really liked the twist at the end, where Lucifer has been using Dante as a toy the whole time to free him. I thought that was a really neat kind of reveal. But again, I guess my one complaint throughout the whole thing was that it was just too short. Like, the answer to that problem was found so quickly that immediately Dante just pulls out the cross and uses it, and it works. There's no battle. Dante's just an absolute killing machine. Yeah. And does amazing. Which again, if it's based on the game, I get that you want to feel powerful and cool. But from a movie standpoint, I'm sure you die a lot in the game, so I wish there was maybe some more of that struggle, at least at each phase. But I did like the twist, and then I loved. Again, I think my favorite parts were just all the visualization of the layers. I thought that was really, really fascinating. And then I just liked learning about they did a lot of passing mentions of biblical figures that had fallen into each layer. Like some had statues built of them
Mm-hmm.
in each layer, and that I'm not ultra familiar, so it was I feel like I learned something. I feel like I learned who kind of fell where and why they fell, which was really fun.
Oh yeah, and it's also really kind of neat too how they come at it from the angle that, or neither side in the crusade was right,
Yeah.
which is something you don't really see too often. But also the fact that they really go at it from that angle, or they bring that twist that like, do you really? No man has the power to absolve you of all of your sins, and like because the church is leading people astray by saying, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
absolved of all your sins. Now go out and kill a bunch of people over in the Middle East."
Yeah. And then I also thought it was really cool how they kind of I guess like painted the picture that he fought the good fight, and then throughout the movie you realize that war and sin corrupted him just like who they were fighting.
Yeah.
So it just kind of I felt they did a really good job of kind of leveling the playing field the further into the movie you got, until you realize that it's all about kind of forgiving yourself and others for the sins, and in the movie not relying on, like you said, some man to say you are absolved.
Yeah.
It's about the human connection between people and
Mm-hmm.
how you feel about it. And for a pretty basic film, I thought it did a really good job conveying that message. I don't know how accurate anyone watching this would find that. It depends on where you swing on any spectrum ever. But I thought it was pretty interesting.
It's also wildly inaccurate compared to the original book. I
Yeah.
mean, it's based on the game, which the game is loosely based on the original book. You get the characters, you get the 9 circles, and you get some of the ideas presented, but nothing really else. Also, I just remembered a key difference with this movie is that in the film, Dante gets his scythe from a just a demon that he ends up killing and taking its weapon. In the
Right away.
game, it's actually from the first boss fight you get it because you killed the Grim Reaper, and it's the Grim Reaper's scythe, and that's how
Oh,
you're able
that's
to
pretty cool.
kill demons in hell is because
Because it's Grim Reaper's
it's
scythe.
Death's scythe. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That is, yeah, I think again, this might have been one of those movies that I just wanted to be longer. I feel like I
Mhm.
wanted more story, and I get animation is a lot more difficult to make a longer film. It's a lot more of
Yeah.
a process,
Well,
but I
also,
definitely
especially
think I could have
especially
used
because it's
more.
like more studios. It's not just one.
Yeah, it's
That's
like who would have worked on the other parts? It would have been a whole big logistical nightmare, I'm sure. But I mean, I think even as it is, I think it's a great little piece. I think it's a fun little movie. If you've played the game, I'm sure you'll love it. If you haven't, like I have, I also liked it. I thought it was really entertaining.
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and give some final thoughts before we move on to the last movie of the day. I would say if you're going to go out and watch this movie, it is on Amazon Prime, I believe, still for free.
Yeah,
So
I
you
just
can.
rented it through Xbox. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I believe it's on Amazon Prime for free still. If not, you can always rent it. And you can always go out and play the game as well. I think it's available through like Xbox Game Pass or EA Play or something like that. As far as like a final thoughts, since this was my choice for you to watch, let's get your thoughts in your score.
Yeah. I think this movie, while it might be tied to a video game, I think it's a great standalone piece. While probably not very accurate. Again, I'm not super familiar with the story, but I think it was a pretty fun movie. I don't think I would watch it again. I think this, like, I get it and I've seen it, and now I can talk about it. It's pretty straightforward. The animation was pretty good. Again, 7 different studios, but I didn't notice. I mean, I guess I did notice, but I kind of was just like animation. And yeah, I think it was pretty good. I had a great time watching it, and the voice acting was good. Yeah, I thought it was great all the way around. Pretty easy watch.
And so, what was the score?
I gave it a 76.
Interesting. All right. Um, Along the same kind of lines, yeah, I think it's very. There are some beautifully animated pieces. A lot of these studios are Japanese, which is lends a lot more to its beautiful flowing action and animation. It does differ from the game slightly, but it tells the same basic story. Like Adrian said, great voice acting. Everything feels like it has weight, but it may be uninteresting for those of us who haven't played the game or don't play video games. But I think it's still a very interesting and unique version of Hell and of the Dante's Inferno story. And I also gave it a 76.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, we actually matched on our scores on that one.
I think it's like the second time that's happened.
Probably.
Yeah, very rare.
So it was actually funny because I watched this probably about a month and a half ago before doing this, and I have a personal, like my own personal scores list that I keep for movies that I watch, and the and I had it as a 76 for all this time, and it's just you managed to find it as
Fell
well.
right into it. Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move on to Adrian's pick for me to watch, a film that I had never seen before, which is Jumper. Released in 2008 and directed by Doug Liman, it stars Hayden Christensen, Samuel L. Jackson, and Jamie Bell. A teenager with teleportation abilities suddenly finds himself in the middle of an ancient war between those like him and their sworn annihilators. So what made you pick this movie, Adrian?
Yeah, I saw this movie in theaters, and it's just one of those movies that's always in the back of my mind for numerous different reasons when things happen. For some reason, it always comes up where I'm like, oh yeah, like that scene in Jumper. And I think it was just a really cool movie for a kid slash teenage me to go watch. I still, after rewatching this for this episode, think it's one of the best, like, teleportation as the only superpower movies. There's no other superpowers in the world. So I think, like, if everyone just had teleportation, I think this is actually a relatively, I guess, like ballpark accurate description. We would definitely have forces that would be assigned to stop it, and I feel like that battle would definitely somehow take place. But I think that everything that happens in this movie is exactly what a teenager that discovers he can teleport would do. I think it feels fun. It doesn't take itself seriously at all to me. I think there's some really cool moments and some really cool foreshadowing that pays off towards the end, and I just think it's a fun ride. I think it's got some cool visuals and some really fantastical set pieces that are really fun to watch too.
Gotcha. So this was my first time watching it, and this movie sucks. I'm sorry.
Nice.
This
I didn't make it.
I think this movie is horrible. It is incredibly rushed. It feels like there's no like reason for anything happening. Like they just kind of like. They're like, okay, come on, let's get to the next action sequence. Let's just rush any kind of story. Oh, there's a mother
like
involved. Who cares? Like, I don't know.
Is
if
it like they jump from scene to scene?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like the movie has a better concept of the actual teleportation than the story does. Let's go ahead and drop spoilers for Jumper. Jumper was not available to stream anywhere. It is available to rent only. So that's important to note. I just really did not like this movie. I mean, which is weird because I usually don't like Hayden Christensen at all. And I think he was a stronger part of this movie. I'm going to go ahead and spoil some thoughts right now. He's awful in Star Wars. But he tries his best here. He's playing a normal human being. He's not playing Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker. He's playing, kind of a version of himself. And Samuel L. Jackson is always Samuel L. Jackson. I can't really fault him for being in a movie
Himself, yeah.
he's awesome. But again, this movie it's very short. I would say it's probably just as short as Dante's Inferno is. It's about an hour and a half.
Pretty quick, yeah.
And you feel it. Like it does. Like, there's no time for any story to develop, really. Like he just gets thrust into this situation, and then is just expected to do stuff. There's a really rushed romance between him and his friend. I don't even remember her name. I don't care to remember. And
Yeah, I don't know. Millie?
something like that. I don't
Something
know.
like that.
It just I don't know if it was the budget was too small for this movie and they couldn't shoot more to justify a lot of things happening. Like Jamie Bell's character comes out of nowhere and we're just supposed to either empathize or hate him or whatever. And then he's just, it's or if it was just a really bad script.
Well, he doesn't but he doesn't come out of nowhere. He's foreshadowed like 3 times before he actually shows up.
Yeah, but like he just shows up and then like has his like fight that he's doing, and you're expected to kind of like get on board with it at first, and it doesn't really feel natural.
Fair enough.
But and I couldn't tell if it was just a bad script either. The thing that was, bad for me is that this is the same director that made Edge of Tomorrow, which is an awesome film. and also The Bourne Identity, which is also a great film. So where did
Hmm.
this one go wrong? And I don't think it is the director on this one. I do think maybe it was studio interference, maybe a budget problem, maybe just a bad script. But let's hear it. That's enough of my complaining. Let's let's
I
flip it over
think
to you.
I don't know, but I think it's based on a book, if I remember correctly. I feel like I remember seeing a New York Times bestselling book before this movie came out. Because I remember seeing the book that said like now based on like now has a major motion picture whenever they get the movie and they slap the sticker on it,
Oh yeah.
and the cover changes to the movie poster. I feel like I remember that happening.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
maybe the book's really good. I haven't read it, but actually I'm gonna add that to my list of books. Um, and I think, yeah, by no means is this movie good, but I think this movie is still super fun. I think there's some really fun things like jumping cars through windows and speeding through the streets while jumping your car in and out of traffic. And then like the whole scene that I feel is pretty iconic when he jumps the London bus into the Egyptian desert. I think that stuff's super fun, and I love the idea that they don't explain the technology too much. Like the paladins, which are the people that fight against the jumpers, that their technology just works. Like the one that keeps the portal open.
Yeah.
There's like zero explanation on that, but you're just like, oh, I guess that works. And now non-jumpers can go through jump scars because of this random box that they put under it. But yeah, I don't think this movie is good by any means, but I do think it's fun, and I think if you haven't seen it, Garrett would probably differ, but I think if you're looking for something like a fun, silly, ridiculous movie that isn't a Fast and Furious movie, then this is probably just like a nice, ridiculous one to put on and laugh at, and just have fun with it.
I would say a film that's the same type of concept, but I would say is better, would be The Old Guard. I think The Old Guard is a better film than this one is, with a similar concept of these people who have abilities that are being
Oh,
hunted.
interesting. Never would have related the two, but I get it.
Yeah, I don't know,
Huh.
and I can see how you would say this is fun. There are some inventive sequences. The fight in the desert is kind of fun, actually, when you have the tour bus, flying through the dune at Samuel L. Jackson, who just manages to somehow get on the other side of it. And the Tokyo driving sequence when they're driving the car through it's an interesting visual, but I hesitate to call this movie fun because it's just so fast. I don't feel like I didn't have time to process anything with how
Sure.
fast this movie was moving. That you know, it just didn't feel fun to me. And it was just yeah, I just didn't like it.
That's okay. Yeah, I also think the scene where he and Jamie are fighting over what is it? It's the what are they chasing?
It was
The,
like I don't even remember. I watched this
they're
like 3 days
chasing
ago.
they're chasing something, but it's two jumpers basically jumping all over the world trying to get this thing. Um, and I thought that was super interesting visually. It was really cool, fast paced, and you went all over the world for these scenes, and you jumped off buildings. And I
Yeah,
mean, I thought again for people that have teleportation powers, and there's no limitation to those powers. So it's not like, oh, you get tired if you just jump yourself. That was all totally. So they were just jumping all over the place, which makes sense.
yeah.
And then
Which
I thought,
I don't really like that. I would have preferred them to be some sort of like like use not like a use indicator or something, but like the best way I can describe it is like spells in Dungeons and Dragons. You can only cast a certain number of them before you can't anymore, right? So,
but we
like,
don't know. I mean, we don't. No one has superpowers, so we don't know.
yeah, I know, but it's like it just feels a way to ground the character and not make them too powerful. Which I guess that's what the paladins and their tech are for,
And I think
wherever
the
they got it from.
jump scar is the limitation that you can follow people through their jump scar.
But that was only left like once or twice, and it was never brought up again. Like, Hayden Christensen could just pop out somewhere, and what about some poor person on the street who's walking behind him, and all of a sudden, vroom, he's in Egypt too, and he's like, "What? That's never
Yeah.
happened." Like it, I don't know.
Well, they do. The paladins. It does come back because they develop a device to keep it open. and then they jump
And
through.
that's one of the times I'm talking about. Is
Oh
the one
yeah,
that's
okay,
left in Millie, I guess is her name, her house. And then
yeah,
there's the one that's in like Jamie Bell's bunker. But no other point in the movie is there ever addressed that there is one.
yeah. And I also think that the another positive that I thought in terms of cool pieces was uh when they foreshadow that a man tried to jump a whole building and
Mm-hmm.
died, and then Hayden Christensen's character jumps a whole apartment
Yeah.
and like literally rips that whole section of the building off and teleports it into a lake. I thought that was pretty cool. Again, there was a lot of this movie. It was pretty obvious, but it laid like foundations and then does pay them off. It laid a lot of those little like tidbits of foundations and foreshadowing, and then it does show you at least some semblance of it later and how it works. So yeah, I thought it was pretty fun.
I also think they were trying to sequel bait as well, towards the end, especially.
I'd go watch another one
I mean, if it's made better, sure. But
if
like
it's. I'd just watch it.
Kristen Stewart's in this movie for no reason. She's just
Well,
the daughter.
she wasn't famous yet.
Isn't this the same year that Twilight came out?
Maybe the year before.
Something like that. I don't know. Maybe it was
Yeah,
like
I don't
you
think
could
she
see her
was.
coming up in Twilight. But then like his mom like shows up once during like the prison sequence to let him go,
Yeah.
and then only comes up again at the end. And it's I forget the actress's name, but she's a bigger actress, and she's only in it for like 5 minutes at the most. And there's like no explanation really given until the very end, and it's like, oh, she's a paladin. If that it was just I don't know.
Well, she's the main paladin. She runs the whole thing.
No, I thought Samuel L. Jackson was the main one.
No, because remember when he asks for the army, and he said, then the guy on the phone says, "She said two would be enough," and then he says, "Yeah, she's the paladin. She's the heads the whole thing."
Shows how much I started paying it's lack of paying attention for this movie. But anything else you want to talk about with Jumper? Because I feel like I've spoken my piece.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty fun. I think it definitely is a very fast ride, as I would kind of expect from a movie that jumps through places. It moves very quickly, and it kind of sets up the powers pretty early on. I mean, the movie kind of gets going maybe 5 minutes in terms of actually seeing the jumping ability, and then I think it has some fun stuff. I think, especially if you're like a teenager or you have teenagers, one of the first things that happens is, of course, he robs a bank because that's what all of us would do if you had teleportation abilities. So I think it was super fun as a teenager for me to watch it and be like, man, I wish I had the ability to jump like that, to teleport. I think it was really kind of a grounded, at least for teenage me, a more like realistic approach to superpowers that felt more possible than some of the superhero movies we were getting at the time. So I think that just really stuck with me too. And watching it again, I felt all that same stuff again. So for me, I still think it's a fun movie. I own it on Blu-ray. Don't know why. Probably don't need to. But I think it's a fun one, and I'll probably give it another watch in a couple, like 4 or 5 years, just to pick it back up.
There you go. That actually reminds me. They never really talked about where the powers come from.
It's just an ability that people have.
Yeah, but they don't talk about like if it's just like if it's like an evolutionary thing or if it's certain people or like if it's some sort of force is giving you that. I don't know, but
But see, I think that's just because it's more about
maybe that's where a
the
sequel
kid,
would have gone.
or maybe it's more about just the kid's imagination and that the powers exist and that's enough. That
Sure.
that's just fun.
This is
Yeah.
the movie version of like a young adult novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I literally, if I remember correctly, I think the book's like this thick. Like I think it's a massive book. So
How?
maybe there's a ton more in the book. I have no idea, but it makes me
Maybe.
now that I wrote that down because it makes me want to read it if there is a book. I'm gonna look it up super quick.
All power to you. But let's go ahead and drop some final thoughts and a score.
There is a book and there's sequels.
Oh,
Jumper, Reflex, and Impulse. It's a trilogy.
wow.
Oh no, and Exo. It's a quadrilogy.
Great. But final thoughts on the score. I think this movie is just way too fast for its own good. I think it's just trying to get to action set pieces. The acting in this movie across the board feels very, I don't want to say bad, but just like borderline mediocre. Samuel L. Jackson's
Sure.
really the only enjoyable person in this movie. Yeah, it's embarrassing that this is the same director as Edge of Tomorrow and The Bourne Identity.
Well, also came way before those two, I believe, right?
Born Identity was first, and then Edge of Tomorrow
Okay,
was
this is in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I did not like this movie. I ended up giving it a 15.
Oh, okay, not bad. I gave this movie a 58. I think this movie, yeah, is by no means good. I agree with you on a lot of points. But I still my main thing, I mean, we did a whole discussion on it. I think this movie's fun. And I think it had some interesting points to it and some interesting ideas. While the whole movie may not have been executed well, I think some of those like larger set pieces that you're talking about that they do get to are really enjoyable for me. And even like just the kind of the fan service of like the what do you like he's running and he's jumping and he's punching while jumping through space.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really fun. So they definitely did a couple of things like that were really enjoyable for me. And then honestly, I wish I could teleport.
I mean, I think we all wish we could. You know, if I can go to, you know, when it's not COVID, if I could go to just like anywhere I wanted to, that'd be great. And not have to have a passport. That'd be easy.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's going to bring us to an end of our first show and tell episode. This was a lot of fun. Actually, it's kind of peering into like what I want Adrian to watch and what he obviously wants me to see.
I also think it'll give everyone more of an idea of the kind of movies that we watch on our own. Because it's movies, yeah, because one of us has already seen them, and eventually we'll start to get a trend of these are the kind of movies that I watch versus you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Adrian, if they want to follow us online, maybe on a social media platform of their choice, where could they do so?
You can find us at The Drive Back Podcast on pretty much everything. We're very active on Instagram. We chatted up there with all the fellow drivers. I just named you guys that. That wasn't a thing before it was, but it is now.
Drivers or passengers? One of the two.
Or paladins.
Oh, shit.
Or jumpers.
Anyway.
Or Dante. Yeah, you can find us.
Demons.
Or death. But you can find us everywhere at the Drive Back Podcast. We do post exclusive stuff here on YouTube if you're watching us and seeing our faces. So we have things with movies that have just come out. We go ahead and we post reviews on them kind of earlier than these podcasts are scheduled. So podcasts come out every Monday, and the YouTube videos come out with no schedule. But if a movie that's big enough has come to theaters or streaming, we put out a shorter, quicker review there, just so you can get the gist right away as it comes out, so you're not too behind when you got to watch it with all your friends or talk about it with them. So we kind of have a little bit of everything on every platform, and it's all a little bit different. So make sure to check us out, subscribe, follow, hit the bell everywhere, and keep in touch.
Absolutely. And as with the YouTube videos, by the time this is out, you should see our Conjuring 3 review up on our YouTube channel, as well as our review for F9, The Fast Saga, will also be up by the time this releases. So check those out, see what we thought, because both of those are from franchises that we reviewed. So, but other than that, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for next week. We've got some more awesome episodes coming up for you. We love you so much. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.